What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, joined by a certified Dresden Files theorist, V, aka Caffeinated Covers on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, V.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
We'll introduce her more in just a sec, but first, remember that all of our links are down below in the description if you'd like to reach out to us on like Twitter or Discord. And as always, liking and subscribing helps the channel a ton, so please do that if you haven't. So yeah, we are gathered here today to resume our Dresden Files read-along with Turncoat. Obviously, we've read the series many, many times, but we keep these episodes for the Dresden Files read-along spoiler-free for future books. So if you've only read up to Turncoat, you are perfectly fine to proceed. We won't be spoiling anything from like the short stories or any future books, so don't worry about that. There may be time at the end of the episode where we talk about future book connections. Maybe not. I don't know. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But we'll give you a fair spoiler warning beforehand. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's introduce our guest and talk a little bit about what some of the other stuff we've been reading lately is. So V, thank you for joining us. You are known as Caffeinated Covers on YouTube. Do you want to talk a little bit about who you are and what your channel is and where people can follow you?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm V from Caffeinated Covers. I do a lot of Dresden Files fan theory stuff, and a lot of it is
really
not
good.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh my God, that makes me feel so good on the inside, y'all. So a lot of the stuff is tying a bunch of things that happen in the series overall together. So it's not necessarily friendly for people who are just going through the series for the first time, but I'm very good on my spoiler warnings, and I'm just moderately obsessed with, okay, that's a little bit of an understatement. I'm pretty obsessed with the series. But yeah, I have a YouTube channel where I do a lot of Dresden Files fan theory videos. I also, I'm active on Twitter, and occasionally I'll also review other books because I do like fantasy, but I like a wide range of fantasy, especially really literary stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're interested in Dresden Files content, other urban fantasy content, like I'm reading Alex Ferris right now, and it's my first time reading through that, so all of that's going to be like first timer friendly. And if you also like other fantasy, like literary fantasy or really dark fantasy, because apparently I have no boundaries, you should definitely follow me. Check me out on YouTube.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, I'm curious now. I have a couple things to say. One of them being that your theory videos are so good. There's been so many times where I've caught one and been like, oh, I didn't think about that. That's so good. So yeah, I've really been enjoying those. But also you mentioned literary fantasy, and I'm curious, what exactly is considered literary fantasy? Like classic fantasy?
So for me, it's more fantasy that's written with a literary or like more, I don't really know how to describe it,
like
but just
Beowulf
ish. I haven't read Beowulf since I was in like middle school, so that isn't a great spot for comparison.
Right.
But no, it's more like Guy Gavriel Kay, where his prose is very beautiful, but it's also accessible and thought-provoking. Like if I could get that guy to like sit down and have a scotch with me and just talk, like that would make my life.
Heck yeah.
And then there's other, like I really appreciate like Aaron Morgenstern's prose, even though I thought that the Starless Sea was a little bit roundabout and needed a little bit more plot to beef it up. But I really
sorry, real quick, are you a fan of The Night Circus then?
I haven't read that, but I have read The Starless Sea. Yeah, no, I have heard so many good things about The Night Circus.
It's like one of my, like outside of fantasy, it's like one of my favorite books ever. I love that book.
Oh yeah. But I also like things like I like Neil Gaiman, and I also really like grimdark type stuff. Peter McLean is one of my favorite authors. He wrote a book that's basically like Peaky Blinders with magic.
Ooh.
Or like a series, the War for the Rose Throne series, which is incredible. But yeah, I just like a big variety of things. And I know that a lot of people just come to certain YouTubers for like urban fantasy or Brandon Sanderson or like a very specific thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, then kind of you mentioning dark fantasy and grimdark and stuff besides the Peter McLean books, do you have any other favorites? Because we're really big grimdark fans over here.
So I've started Gardens of the Moon,
Okay.
and I haven't gotten like as far as I wanted to in it.
It's a hard book to read.
I so I don't think I got far enough in it to think that it was hard, but
Okay.
at the same time, I know that this is a series that will just dump you into something that's happening and you don't necessarily know how to connect everything, which
Right.
is fine for me, but I know a lot of people really, really struggle with that. And I think that that point of view is valid.
Sure.
I'm looking at my bookshelf right now
You're
to
good.
just like
Yeah, you're good.
figure my life out.
Have you read like Night Angel?
Oh no, but I have a friend that literally like we did like a friend cruise a couple of years ago, before like the Rona and everything hit.
Yeah.
And we were on a beach in, I think it was like Turks and Caicos, the most beautiful clear water I've ever seen in my life. And he's just like sitting on the beach reading like Night Angel and stuff.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Night Angel is definitely one of our like top 3 favorite series. You'd probably really like it if you like grimdark.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I know it's off-putting for some people, but just I appreciate the rawness and how real everything is,
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
really, and that's one thing I really like about Dresden is there's not really like a good guys versus bad guys. It's people who think that they're good guys fighting other people who think that they're good
Yeah.
guys. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a great way to put it, and that's why I like a lot of the villains in the series, especially like Nicodemus. Like
Yes.
Nicodemus is probably the closest thing you have to like an evil for evil's sake kind of character.
Mhm.
But also like once you learn a little bit more about him, it's like, okay, like he has a plan. Like he has like, we don't necessarily know exactly what it is, but we know that he has something that he's trying to accomplish because he believes in it.
Exactly.
And
It's the belief. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Goal that he
Also-
believes in thoroughly.
Right.
And I know I literally finished Turncoat like right before we started this.
Nice.
And I finished Small Favor 2 days ago, for the second time around. And I'm actually really conflicted on Nicodemus because I know he's evil for evil's sake, and you can't just have like Judas's implement of destruction around your neck. Trying to keep it PG for the
Yeah.
electronic YouTube moderators. But yeah, that's also fun finding out ways to say other things
Right. Yeah.
because computers are stupid. But sorry, yeah.
No, you're good.
No,
you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
One last thing before we go into what we're doing is I'll mention, if you like dark fantasy and you like grimdark, you absolutely need to read, or I love the audiobook of We Men of Ash and Shadow. I think you'd really, really like that one if you like Peter McLean's work, especially.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much we're gonna go into it. Oh, we're gonna talk real quick about, have we been reading anything else other than Dresden Files lately? Has there been anything interesting that we've picked up on the side?
So right now I'm reading Alex Ferris, and I'm
Right.
trying to do 1 book a week, but obviously first one is getting delayed. I told my followers that because they were really excited about it. I also, what was that book that I was reading? Oh, The Last Tale of the Flower Bride and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this author's name, Roshani Chokshi. And it's a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a Gothic story about a man who marries an heiress. And there's definitely some surreal speculative fiction stuff going on, and the writing is gorgeous. And I actually I got halfway through the audiobook, and then I had to give it back to my library because they only give us like a week or 2 for like new releases.
Right.
But I'm waiting for my opportunity to borrow the book again to come through, because there's a lot of other people in my area interested in it. But that book is beautiful, and I'm not sure if I don't know if it's a bestseller or not. So I figured, hey, elevate like mid-list and other amazing works.
Nice.
I have read a couple books, or I should say I read 1 book and I started another. I finished Pieces of 8 by Peter Hartog. Yeah.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Yep. Really, really awesome sequel to the first one. I feel like, I really feel like that it was like just better.
Yeah.
so much more going on. The story was awesome. So that was cool. And then I also started The Vagrant because I was looking for kind of, I was looking for kind of a apocalyptic,
Yeah, another great
Fallout.
dark fantasy.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And so
Nice.
I'm like maybe 2 hours into that, and I'm liking it a lot so far.
Oh,
Nice.
cool.
But that's it. Yeah.
Nice.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
I also read Pieces of Eight pretty recently, and that's a really good book if you're a big Dresden Files fan and you've read everything but you want more Dresden Files, read those books by Peter Hartog, because it is literally, I think it's set in New York, and they call it Liberty City, and or Empire City. Empire City, yeah. Liberty City is Grand Theft Auto, I think.
Yeah.
But it's literally like Dresden Files, but in the future.
Yeah.
And so, especially in the second book, there's like full on. The first book kind of hints at the magic, but the second book, there's full on like people throwing ice spikes around and fireballs and stuff. And so it gets really, really cool. But just the tone of the book, and the main character is the detective who is investigating supernatural things happening in the city. And just the overall tone of it, it's like, oh, this is Dresden Files. Like this feels like, and the witty humor, and it's so good. So yeah, if you want more Dresden, check that out. The other thing that I have read a bit of lately is I got up to book 5 in Cradle. Yeah.
Audible. Cradle.
Yeah, got up to book 5 in Cradle. Gabe and I had a bit of a wager going on. If I finished 5 books in Cradle, he would read Red Rising. We'll have to figure that out soon. We'll do an episode on that. But yeah, I liked Cradle so far. It's not like my favorite series ever, but I definitely want to keep going. I think the way that the 5th book ended had me like ready to read the 6th book and keep going and keep going. So I'm looking forward to that, but I had to take a break because I had read 5 in a row. Within like a week and a half. I just like boom, 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 just knocking them out.
They're pretty short, but I could see how you want to break after that for sure.
Yeah. And so I was just like, man, there's a lot of stuff coming out right now, and I need to read some other things just in the meantime. And what's funny is what leads me into my last thing that I read, partially, is during the time that I was reading Cradle, I had a hold on the 3rd First Law book on my Libby app. Somewhere during like the 2nd book or something, I think it was like, hey, your book is available. You can read Before They Are Hanged, or whatever the 3rd one is. And I was like, okay, I'm like, I'll get to that. I'll finish this thing in Cradle and just keep going while I still have momentum, and then I'll go back to that. And then Turncoat came up, and I was like, oh, I got to read Turncoat. So I was trying to cram the 3rd book in the First Law. And then it got to the point where I'm like, okay, if I don't start Turncoat right now, I'm not going to finish before Sunday. So I had to start Turncoat. And then while I was reading Turncoat, it was like, your hold on Before They Are Hanged has expired. And so now I'm like halfway through Before They Are Hanged, or whatever the 3rd is. And I'm like, damn it.
Now
dude.
you have to wait.
So now I have to wait for my hold again. So yeah, I don't know how long that'll take. I think what I'm gonna read next is Blood for Coins. Our friend Cam Wolf, another booktuber, he has just done his debut novel in his fantasy series that he's writing, and he sent us advanced reader copies of that. So I think I'm gonna check that out and post a review for it, and then we'll have him on the podcast at some point to talk about it. But I think that's my next read.
Very cool.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, so let's talk about Dresden. Let's get into talking about the Dresden Files. Everybody, this is your spoiler warning for Turncoat. Obviously, we won't spoil anything ahead of Turncoat or the short stories, but just remember that we are going to be spoiling it in its entirety. So, you've been warned. This is your spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, what'd you think of Turncoat?
I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Dude, for the first time, like reading this book, like there's a couple, Dresden books where I get emotional or whatever, but like this book, for some reason, this like read through, like really just got me in my feels a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought I would actually care about Donald Morgan other
Yes.
than
Right.
like hatred.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. And that's it. And I was just like, come to the end, and I was just like crying, dude. I was
Yeah.
like, this is so sad and so like heartfelt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good book. I like this one a lot. I don't think it would be in my top 3. Maybe in my top 5. I'm not sure, but I do like. So here's the thing. Every time I go through the series, I think when we get to Small Favor,
Mhm.
I'm like, oh yeah, I think I really liked Small Favor. Or wait, no, it's backwards. It's so for Turncoat, it's I think I'm really gonna like, or I don't remember liking Turncoat. I'm not gonna like it this time through. And every time I go through it, I'm like, oh, I liked Turncoat a lot more than I thought I would. And then
Mhm.
it's the opposite for Small Favor, where in my head I think that I really like Small Favor, and I go through it and I'm like, I don't like Small Favor that much. And so it's kind of interesting how they're right after each other and kind of so backwards in my head. But I like Turncoat a lot. I like all the little bits of foreshadowing and maybe not so much foreshadowing, but just like setting things up, like with that whole like Peabody at the end there,
Yeah.
everything
Mhm.
around that. It's
Yep.
like, oh man, that's setting up major events for the future.
For sure.
And yeah, I like this book a lot.
Oh, also, for anybody who's interested in reading like the short stories or the graphic novels, now that you've read Turncoat, it is safe to go back and read. Oh my goodness, which one was it? There is a Dresden Files graphic novel where it's basically like Dresden and the Young Wardens versus
The vampires.
the
Yeah.
Red Court.
Yeah.
I think
War
it's called
Cry.
War Cry. Yeah. Because at the very end, like when the either like the last or the second to last panel
You see
gives away that
Peabody, right?
Peabody.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Oh, I forgot about that.
I
Yeah,
haven't read that.
dude, I just got a subscription to Comixology, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
read all of the Dresden comics because I've only read Warcry,
Mhm.
and so I want to go through and like get on my tablet and like actually read all the Dresden comics.
Mhm. I've read a couple of them and they're pretty good. I used to think that I wished that I had gone through the series and read all of the short stories and all of the comic books as I was going through the main books. But then I got to the end of that and I was like, if I had read this before I had read Turncoat, I would have felt really, really bad.
My recommendation to new readers is always get to Changes, then read the first batch of short stories, and then go on until I think Skin Game, and then
Mhm.
it's the next batch of short stories, and then Peace Talks and Battlegrounds.
Mhm.
Because I was thinking for the reread, I was thinking like, should we do like this many books and then read the short story that goes along with like that batch? I'm
Mhm.
like, I think that's just too like that's too much work for the people just like kind of casually viewing the or listening to the podcast and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would definitely be hard to you would have to have like a really good like timeline and be like dedicated to it in order to do all the comics and stuff along with it.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I think it's going to be enjoyable for me to go through all the comics and stuff after. I mean, I've read the series and the short stories a bunch
Right.
of times, so it'll be cool to like be able to fit them in there and kind of see where they go. We do have a bit of an announcement. Jim is so the Olympian Affair is sent off to the editor, and that is the second book in his Cinder Spires series. And he also said that he just completed the first chapter of the next Dresden Files book. And he says that he's got about 16 to 18 weeks of writing to do. And then it gets sent off to the editor and stuff. So I'm assuming that we should have another Dresden book in, what do you think, 8 to 10 months? That sound right?
I hope so.
About
Me
6
too.
months for production and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope so. I'm really, really excited about this new
Me
book.
too.
I was really worried that we were going to get Battleground and then it would be like another like 5 years like it was in between Skin Game and Peace
No,
Talks.
he's doing it, dude. He's doing
Oh
it.
yeah, no,
I'm
he's
like,
going for it.
Even
I'm
on his
like,
website, it says 4%, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's progress.
right,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad to see him working on it. because I was just like, I haven't really heard anything about the new book. I would love to. I know he's working on the Olympian affair. I would love to get some sort of update. And so for him to say, like, whatever it was, 16 to 18 weeks, I'm like, okay, that's something. Like,
It's
we
happening.
know
It's
we know
happening.
that he's working on it. We know that he's going.
And so there's supposed to be the trilogy, right? That's supposed to be the 3 books that end the Dresden Files.
No,
No.
we have quite a few books to go until then.
Okay.
Until the big apocalyptic trilogy.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking of. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, because we have 12 months. We have Mirror Mirror. We have Heel Turn, which is like the wrestling one.
Wait, there's a wrestling one?
Yeah, there's a wrestling one.
How did I not know this?
Yeah, it's like all the old gods, like Thor and all of them. They've become like professional wrestlers.
Wait, what?
And yeah,
I'm so confused.
And this isn't fan fiction?
That's
No.
a Dresden Files book by Jim Butcher. Does it have anything to do with the story?
Yeah,
is it just its own?
It's part of the main story. And Harry is dealing with these like, how he met Hades. It's like the same thing, but like instead, like it's like Thor and all of them, and
that's wild.
Dealing with all the Greek gods. And
they
then
have a wrestling tournament.
Yeah, and then there's another one that's supposed to be like the Godzilla book, like the kaiju, like dealing with all the kaijus and stuff like that. And then
if it's Godzilla, do you think we'll see the Jade Court?
People have been wondering that. Yeah, people have been wondering if we'd see the Jade Court in the Godzilla one, because like, why not? And I think Butcher has even said, like, I'm not sure if I'm going to put them in the series, but like, you'll hear about them and you'll meet one of their agents. And so who knows, but I hope we see the Jade Court. I would love to learn more about them. But yeah, then I think after the Godzilla one, there's the time travel book, and then it's the apocalyptic trilogy. So we got like four or 5 books to go until we get our big trilogy, which is
wow. Yeah,
which is why I'm like, man, I hope I wish he would just like set the Cinder Spires aside. I'm like,
you and everybody else, dude.
Yeah. I'm like, no one really cares about the Cinders. Like, I know it's something. The important thing is that it's something that Jim Butcher likes, right? And so it's something to kind of break up the monotony of writing Dresden. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, you should just crank these Dresden Files books out. I'm like, you're not getting any younger, man. Like, come on.
So if we haven't started the Cinder Spires, because I have, oh my goodness, I have the first book.
Ooh,
I haven't started it.
Yeah,
I'm sitting right under Chronicles of Amber, which I'm sure he read doing research for the fairy stuff. Would you consider this something that somebody should rush or put higher on their TBR?
I haven't read it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I haven't either, but I've always wanted to like go read some of his other stuff. Like Codex Alera is written by him, right? Yeah.
Right.
Have you read that V at all? Have you ever checked that out?
I have not.
Okay, me neither. Yeah, but I wanted to. I'm like,
same.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, that's our Jim Butcher news. So I'll be looking forward to that, of course. So like I said, this book isn't one of my favorites, but it does have some of my favorite like moments in it. Like there are certain moments in this book that's like one of my favorite in the whole series. So that's cool. And also Jim was feeling raunchy writing this book. There was so much like super raunchy humor, and I loved it. Like I by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, this is like the 13th joke about like sex or just like random stuff like that. I thought it was so funny. I'm like, it seems like way more than is usual.
I mean, it was a White Court book.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Something interesting I thought about Morgan is Harry tells Butters about Morgan hunting him his whole like adult life, and
Butters is like, why are you being nice to him?
Yeah, Butters is like, why are you doing this?
Dude?
And Harry kind of explains Morgan truly believes that Dresden has been influenced by dark magic. Harry says he thought I was a dangerous animal and needed to be put down. He really believed it and acted accordingly. He was wrong. That doesn't make him a villain. That just makes him an asshole. And so I thought that was really interesting because I don't know if I've ever really paid attention to that line. And this read through, I was like, well, I had always kind of considered Morgan a bit of a villain. But this read through, I was like, no, like he is like, if you look at Harry, Harry believes certain things, and Harry can be wrong, but he will still, like, if he thinks he's right, he's going all the way and he's not stopping and he's not setting down his morals for anybody else. And it takes a lot to convince him that he's wrong. And so Morgan is just another type of that. Like, he's just like,
Yep.
he's like, I believe that. Like, I believe that something has happened to this boy. And we find out in the microfiction that we'll talk about later. And he believes that something has happened to Harry.
He's been influenced.
Yeah. And he acts accordingly. And so I thought it was really cool of Harry to kind of take that moral high ground, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't fault a guy for doing what he thinks is right. I guess that's kind of because there's people that think it's right to kill somebody, whatever. But
right.
I feel like in this situation, like, you really just can't fault him for doing his job, because he's been, the warden, one of the best for a long time, and he's always upheld all the laws and done what he needs to do to make sure everything is how it should be.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I think that something a lot of us miss, because these stories are told through Dresden's perspective, is that Morgan has seen a lot. And Harry might think that it's abhorrent to be trying and convicting a lot of warlocks, which are kids that don't know any better. But Morgan has seen the fallout of when you don't get to them soon enough.
Yes, absolutely.
It's true. Any other general thoughts? I have one more, but if you
Go
guys
for it.
have anything. Okay, I thought the whole Vince Graver thing was great. I loved him as a character.
For sure.
And I really, really hope he comes back. I really hope we see more
It'd be cool.
of Vince.
He's really freaking talented, dude. When he's like at telling him that Banner's at the hotel, and stuff, and Harry's like, how did you? He's like, that doesn't matter. As long as my check clears, it doesn't matter.
And then Murphy figures out that he dressed up as like room service.
Yeah.
And went up there. I thought that was
cool.
Great.
He's like, room service. What do you think? There's a girl in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then, also, if Jim ever wanted to write a story about a mortal who has to deal with all the supernatural stuff that he knows is out there, but doesn't have the power to really fight.
Yeah.
That would be a good way.
Vince would be it. Yeah. Totally.
That's a great idea. I didn't even think about that. I loved Molly's interaction with him. I thought that whole thing was so she's like, wait, you're saying there's a guy around there around my age and he's stuck in his car and we need information from him on this,
and Morgan is like, I will not let you use black magic and try to control his mind. It's like, I don't need to use magic.
Yeah, for real, dude. Yeah, that was funny. She gets all done up, gets the shirt unbuttoned. Like, just wait. I'm gonna go out there.
Watch me work.
Yeah. Oh, I do have one more. I kind of wish we had seen more of Lafortier before he had died. Lafortier in previous books. I don't know if I've always felt this way, but reading through this time, I was kind of thinking on it. I felt like he was almost kind of a MacGuffin for the story to move forward, just because we hadn't really gotten a lot of him in the past books, maybe a mention or two, but
yeah, I think he had a brief mention in Summer Night, and I could be completely misplacing this, but he seemed very very dismissive of Harry, like he had already made up his mind almost.
I don't know. I just wish we had more of like, I feel like Turncoat wanted me to feel something about Lafortier dying, and I just didn't, because I didn't really know.
See, I disagree with that.
Okay.
I don't think that it was required to feel something. I think his death, as we know, was just a pivot point.
Plot device. Yeah.
Plot device. Yeah.
Because this book was a lot of payoff.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, for sure. But I can see where you're coming from too. Like, it would have been nice to like know about him, right? But I don't think it was necessary.
Right, for sure. Yeah, you make a good point. It wasn't necessary, definitely. So now we're going to do what we do for every Dresden Files episode. And every time we have a guest on, we say, please join in on this and help us rank.
Yes.
So let's go through our rankings and we'll figure out where Turncoat fits. At number 10, dead last, we have Stormfront. 9 is Grave Peril. 8 is Full Moon. 7 is Summer Night. 6 is Blood Rites. 5 is Death Masks. 4 is White Knight. 3 is Deadbeat, 2 is Small Favor, which is funny because like I said earlier, it's not my favorite by far. Like it would be like probably in the lower half for me. But we had Jake Bishop on last time, and him and Gabe voted me out on
Yep.
that. So Small Favor is 2. Then we have Proven Guilty at number 1. So let's have a conversation about where we think Turncoat would go in this listing.
Are we doing just like content wise or like how I felt about it? Oh, probably how I felt about it, right?
Yeah, just like
So-
where you think it ranks. Yeah.
I would put it between 1 and 2.
Okay.
So I would put it as the second.
Okay. What do you
Yep.
think?
I think it definitely deserves a spot in the top 3. I also just read Small Favor right before I read this book, and just going through it on a reread, there were a lot of things I picked up on that I was extremely pleased and intrigued, and just the way that Jim foreshadowed things. One of my favorite things about the series is that it seems like very pulpy and digestible, but there's a very long game being played out, and I really appreciate that. So I think that this book might be crap.
I know it's hard.
Yeah,
it is hard.
no, because Proven Guilty, I am a big Molly Carpenter fan. Like
Yes.
if I
Yes,
ever went
we
to a
are too.
convention,
Yeah.
I would dress up as multiple outfits of hers.
Yes.
Right.
I love her style. But Small Favor was brilliant for like overall series stuff. And Deadbeat, Polka Will Never Die. I don't know how you
Yes.
get more iconic
Right.
than that.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. It was a lot
Yeah.
easier.
It sounds like you're right with me. Right
Yeah.
behind Proven Guilty, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. See?
So number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah, let's throw it at number 2.
Okay.
And then now let's hear the counter argument from Spencer.
I don't really have one, honestly.
know,
Like
yeah.
I think that you guys are right. I think that you know, I think it could really go anywhere above Small Favor for me personally.
Yeah.
But with Small Favor being there, like this is not like how I would rank the Dresden Files, but now I'm just trying to like make it as close to that as I can with my vote.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that, you know, given what we have on this list, I think that Turncoat could be a good number 2. Yeah, I think that looks right.
Sweet. Well, then we're set.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, the list was a lot easier when we had only gotten to like death masks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like
there was 10 books. Yeah.
yeah, they were all like in an order, like whatever
Yeah.
the latest book was, it was the best. And
Mhm.
now we're getting to the point where things are starting to drop down the list and go
Yep.
back up. And you know, I think that as we go on, it's just going to get more and more
Yeah.
difficult. Like,
Once we get further, we could do like a list, like overview, and like
Yeah.
change up what needs to be changed and
Mhm.
stuff.
right,
Yeah.
Cool.
like looking at this list, dude, where the hell are we going to put changes? Like, oh my god. It's going to be so tough.
Good
Like,
point.
I mean, like it's gotta like, man, for me it wouldn't take the number 1 and we're not ranking changes right now, but for me it wouldn't take the number 1 spot, but oh, it'd be close. It'd be so
Yeah.
close. All right, so let's move on to like our favorite moments and quotes and characters. This used to be like 3 separate kind of categories, and I've just kind of mushed it all together into one. So we can just throw in like whatever our favorite anythings are into this. If you had like a character that you really liked in this book, or if you had a quote that was particularly funny or meaningful. So I don't know if you guys have anything or see anything on this list that you really want to bring up.
I just thought it was hilarious that every time Harry left his apartment,
Yeah.
Molly and Morgan
and Anastasia.
and the dog would get in on it too.
Oh man, dude.
He'd always come back to them about to kill or about
Yep, about to kill each other pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there would always be conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene with Mouse
Yes.
when he gets shot is one of my favorites of all
Oh,
time.
where he was faking.
Yes,
Well, of
yeah.
course
the
he
whole
wasn't
time.
like okay, but he was just
Well, yeah,
like
no, he's a big,
overblowing it to teach Molly a
exactly
lesson.
teach
That was
Molly
hilarious.
the lesson. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. It was just a really good like moment, especially for Molly, like just from her perspective, like that was like super eye-opening and very like kind of enlightening to her, because she's like,
Yeah.
holy shit, like my actions do have consequences,
Oh
and the
yeah, and
shit that I try and do can hurt other people without even me
Right.
thinking about, you know?
oh yeah, and like she's a very like empathetic person.
Yeah.
And that's like the best way to get through to her. So that
Yes.
part was just
Yes.
brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's great because Mouse did that all on his own. He wasn't
Mhm.
told. That's why I love him, dude. He's like smarter
Yeah.
than most humans ever, dude. But nobody gives him credit for it except for Harry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that scene. It makes me like, so I've read through the series so many times that there's scenes that like used to make me tear up that don't anymore, just because I've read them so many times. But yesterday I was in Fred Meyer. I was grocery shopping, and this scene came on, and I'm like, oh no, it's the mouse scene. And I was like about to walk into the store, and I'm like, do I want to pause it or go out to my car for this scene? Like, I don't know. And I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, no, I've heard this chapter so many times. Like, it'll be fine. And I'm like in Fred Meyer, and my throat is closing up, and I just feel the pressure in my eyes. And I'm like, okay, I gotta pause it. And like I paused it and waited until I got back out to the car.
You go cry in the truck for 10 minutes and be like,
Yeah.
all right, we're ready to go.
Yep.
Yeah, because dude, that scene is so good. And it talks about, Molly is having like this moment where she's like, oh my God, I can't do this. And then she finally does. And like, as she has to like use the scalpel to open him up a little bit more. And it says that he howls.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
Harry
oh
says
my
it's a
God.
sound he's never heard from the dog before.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was,
Exactly. And just that whole scene was so good. And there's this moment, they're getting Mouse ready, and Harry asks Molly like, go get the kit and all this stuff, and she comes back and tries to hand it to him, and he's like, no, you are doing this, like you are gonna ease his pain and do this yourself. And she's like, I can't do it, but I and he's like, I think I have the quote here. He's like, I Mouse put his life on the line to protect you, Molly. If you want to remain my apprentice, you will stop using sentences that begin with I and ease his pain. And oh, it's just such a good scene. It's so good.
And it's cool to think about too, like, like people cry at sad scenes and stuff, but I feel like this, well, Jim Butcher in general, there's a lot of like very emotionally charged scenes that happen throughout a series that they're not even sad, they're not even dangerous, they're not even nobody's gonna die, nobody's gonna get hurt, nobody's whatever, but it's like still just like a moment of like growth that is so profound that it's like it just means a lot to the reader,
Yeah, absolutely.
The one problem I had with the scene, well, two, because like I'm a dog lover and I'd go like John Wick on someone's behind if they
Me
did the wrong
too.
thing. But Molly is known for having an uncanny ability for like mind magic. And she didn't try to like do anything with Mouse's mind to ease the pain or make him forget about this.
I don't know if Harry would have let her, though. I don't think there's any way that Harry would let her into Mouse's mind.
But it's not breaking a law of magic because he's a dog.
It would have been like,
well, yeah, but still, he'd be like,
Dorme Dumios, like the sleep spell, right? Like put him to sleep.
Yeah.
I just don't think that there's any way, especially after that whole thing.
For sure. Like that was a teaching moment, and there was a reason why you can't just cheat and bypass that. She needed to feel Mouse's pain and how much he was hurting in order to absorb the lesson that was being given.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about Harry deciding to help Morgan in the first place? Him showing up to Harry's door. And initially, and obviously we know the end of the story, we know like kind of why, but initially I had the thought of, why would he be helping him? Like, I would tell him like, go fuck yourself. Like, you have hounded me my entire life, and I'm going to leave you on my front doorstep. What do you guys think was going through Harry's mind at that particular moment?
So I really feel that like Harry as a character has been trying to prove that he's not what everybody thinks he is his whole life, especially Morgan.
Right.
And I think that it would have been a betrayal to just his internal self if he was to do what you said and say, go fuck yourself. And so,
True.
like, as much as he hated it, as much he despised this man that just fucked him over every chance you could get, he's like, this, he knew in his heart and his head, he's like, this Morgan didn't do this. There's
Right.
somebody out there that did.
Yeah.
And this man is innocent, because we know Morgan. There's no, there's no way that he would ever do something like this.
Right.
And so, yeah, I felt how hard it was for him to do it,
Yeah.
but I also felt that, like, it was something he would never forgive himself if he didn't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I also think, I don't know if it was in Deadbeat or another book before, but Harry talked about how he sort of understood Morgan and kind of respected him, even if he thought he was an asshole.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that Harry, given his history with being persecuted for something that he was innocent or had a really good reason to do, like self-defense and all that jazz,
Right.
that Harry would have been able to balance this, I hate you as like a person or on a personal level, but at the same time, I understand and respect you, and I know what it feels like to be in your position.
Yeah.
And I think that Harry's nature goes back to that scared, hurt 16-year-old boy a lot of the times when
sure.
he had to fight Justin Dumorn.
Yeah.
Right.
Good point.
For the first time, we see the process of Harry seeing something that is really foul and evil.
Man, yeah.
And like
Crazy.
we've been told in the past that, you know, if you see something, it could be really bad or it could be really good or somewhere in the middle. But I think this is the first time we're seeing that firsthand, besides maybe the time that he saw Kincaid.
And let's clarify, seeing with Harry's sight, his wizard sight.
Yeah. And with Kincaid, it wasn't this whole thing where he was like really messed up afterwards. He just like, he saw it and he's like, oh, that's the real Kincaid. And then life went on. This is the first time that we're seeing him like what the extent of like the mental damage can be from seeing something like that. What do you guys think of this scene?
I was really afraid that Harry was going to run into something, because he's basically like looking around with his sight, and then he looks up and he sees the Nagloshi up, like chasing him, like jumping over rooftops and stuff.
Yeah.
And then he pulls over onto a sidewalk and it's just like, I don't care if I get towed, I'm just going to leave my car because I'm going to hurt somebody. And honestly, I was just waiting for him to do something with his car to hurt somebody in between.
For sure.
Seeing that.
Yeah.
What a wild scene. And I think Jim Butcher really sells the gravity of what happened really well, like in Harry's own mind. Because like to me, the feeling I got was, it was like, you know, an all encompassing, just absolute fear, disgust. And he even says it. He's like, imagine, like, you know, he lists through like 8 different senses and 8 things that are the worst, like a dead body and vomit and this and that and that and that. And he's like, imagine it was all in your eyes. And I'm like, dude, what?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And then also seeing him come out of it too was really, that was just as cool. Like, you know, he did the times tables to keep himself centered until he could get to the
werewolf house.
Yeah, I was going to say their name. Billy. Yes, thank you. Billy and George's house. And he's like, dark room, give me in a dark room. And he gets in there and he fights it. He says, you know, I forced myself, every time it would go away, I forced myself to live it again and over and over and over and over again until like it wasn't, you know, until I could get used to the feeling. Cause that's what he said. He's like, I'll never forget this. I just need to learn to live with it, which is really wild, dude. Like, could you imagine? Like, could you imagine something like that? I would break, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. If I was a wizard, I'd never use my sight.
Yeah, I would break for sure.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because he talks about like, if you do that, like you can get over something like that and you can force yourself, but it's like, it's not the vision or anything that's changing. It's you are adapting this
you're
thing.
changing.
And so like over time, it can have really bad consequences for you as like a person and a wizard and stuff. And so it's interesting to think about like how many times can somebody do that? I think he even says that, like, how many times can somebody do this until they're just a raving lunatic or super evil or something.
And this kind of brings me back to Morgan a little bit, just because he's seen a lot of stuff and like other people in the council, like McCoy has very strong opinions about certain other supernatural entities. And basically every time they see something terrible or see another organization do something, it changes their perspective. And I think that like the site is sort of a metaphor for how that happens, because the more you see the difference, or excuse me, your opinion changes on certain things, and then it just like keeps bearing on you to the point where you act a certain way just because everything is terrible,
Right.
or everything is one way or everything is another.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw this in your notes too, V. Morgan nuclear bombed a Nagla.
Oh
sheep.
yeah,
That was badass.
That was cool, dude. And Harry's like, "You nuked him?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, "Yes, I did."
And I love the moment.
Don't hit it if it
gave them.
works.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
I love the moment it gave them too. After like all this animosity for years and stuff, they kind of have this moment where like, you know, he tells Harry that, and Harry's like, dude, that's super cool. And Morgan's
Yeah,
like,
that's
yeah,
actually
I know,
badass.
right? And like,
Yeah.
it's like,
It's like just like a little tiny
Yeah.
bro moment, dude.
right,
Just like a
yeah.
little tiny one.
Like, oh man, I super respect that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Let's see. Oh, so then we get another really good emotional moment. I think like some of the moments with Molly in this book are some of my favorites, because one of my other favorite books is White Knight. And I really like that and Proven Guilty, because we get a lot of kind of Molly teaching moments. And I think this book had that in spades, probably the most of them.
For sure.
And so after Molly tries to assault Morgan with a candlestick, and by the way, it's funny, earlier in the book, he mentions Clue and he says it was Colonel Mustard with the candlestick or something. And then Molly later literally has a candlestick and is trying to assault Morgan with it. I thought that was kind of funny. But so this whole thing with Morgan happens where it's like the first time he comes home and the house is all like messed up and stuff. And she says to Harry, but in his eyes, you're just this thing. You're just this thing that did something bad once and you'll never be anything else. And Harry kind of has this revelation. He's like, oh, she's not really mad at Morgan. She's like dealing with her own feelings about the things that she's done. And so he says, kid, maybe think about who you were really mad at back there. You did a bad thing once. It doesn't make you a monster. And James Marsters does such a good job with this. Oh my God. And she's like crying and she's like, what if it does? What if it does, Harry? And it's just, it's heartbreaking. I love it so much. I think James Marsters does those really, really emotional scenes really, really well. But yeah, I love that scene because she's kind of coming to grips with the things throughout this whole book. She's coming to grips with the things that she's done and trying to work past it and trying to work through some final things before we get into like changes and ghost stories, things that she needs to things that her character needs to like accomplish or
accept,
like kind of
and understand.
Before we get into some of the bigger battles that are ahead. And so I like these moments where she's really having like these transformative moments and he's being like a real mentor to her. And then she says, just before Mouse knocked me down, I wanted to do things to Morgan, to his mind, to make him act differently. But who would want to do that? What kind of monster would feel that? And Harry says, the humankind, Molly. You are a good person. Don't let anyone take that away from you, not even yourself. She says, are you sure? He says, yes, you're okay. You aren't a monster. You're going to be okay, Grasshopper. And just, this moment, it's so good. Every single time it gets me. And it reminds me, like, honestly, a lot of talks that like I would have like with my uncle when I was young. Cause like, I didn't have a dad around and I was like, I didn't have like a dad who would like have those kind of talks. And I also had like a really troubled youth up until like my early to mid 20s. And I would have a lot of these kind of talks with my uncle where he would, kind of be the Harry in this situation. And so I think that those always just like hit me really, really, really hard. And then of course we get a little bit of comedy relief at the end of that scene with Morgan holding up an honest to God gold pocket watch. He's like tapping from the van. He's like tapping his pocket watch.
And Harry's like, all right, it's okay. We got to get moving. Gotta get moving.
I think Jim Butcher does that really well of like, it's almost kind of like something you would see in like a TV show or like a movie or something where you have like this really like soft and like sad, kind of sad moment. And then he like breaks it up with some comic relief in just the perfect way. And also Morgan has his juice box, which was hilarious.
Keep those sugars up, baby. Come on.
Him in his wheelchair, just like sucking at his juice box.
It's like you're not you when you're hungry.
That's right. Exactly.
All right. So I had a few in a row there. Do you guys have any other like favorite moments you'd like to talk about from your notes or whatever?
So another favorite moment of mine is when the book is pretty much over. Thomas was terrorized, brutalized by this Nagloshi so bad. And after a couple of weeks go by, Harry calls Justine, or well, I think he calls her before, but he's like, I want to see my brother. Like, when can I see him? And they send him out, and Thomas is just like not
Vacant,
himself
yeah.
at all. He's just, nothing is there. Just like, just a demon.
Yeah.
And that was like, dude, that was like really scary. Like, I could imagine reading that for the first time. And that like is like really scary because like we love Thomas. Thomas has like always had Harry's back, and now he's turned in this monster that he's been striving to like get away from for so long. Like he doesn't want to be this just demon of hunger and doesn't want to kill a bunch of people. But now he's like, the little
food.
Yeah, the little game they play, exactly. It was like, wow, dude, it was really like just freaky.
Yeah. It reminded me a lot of, I always kind of think that vampires are really similar to like drug addicts in the way that they're written.
Yeah.
So like if you had like a friend that used to be like a drug addict and then he got away from it for a long time and was doing well, and then one day you just see him again, he's like, oh yeah, I'm going back to that. He's like, I'm loving it. And it's like, wait, what?
It's not even like going back. It's like saying like this is what I should be doing.
Right.
Like this is like I have been missing out on life because I haven't been doing this. Which is that to me is like, that's like a step above, you know what I mean? Like that's like another mental step away from just like, falling into it again. Like he's like, man, my life was ruined until I started doing this again.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's wild where he's like, I think I could make a real difference and all that.
And
it's
it sounded like he believes it, dude.
Yeah.
Like he was like, seriously, he's just seriously in a different headspace right now.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, at the same time, like Nagloshi was like terrible to him.
Dude, like ripped off his skin like over and over again, and then fed him a young girl, ripped off his skin. Dude, I can't even comprehend how freaking terrible that, even for a vampire, like that has to be like some of the worst like abuse that anything's ever gone through.
Yeah, for real. Anything from you, V? Any other favorite moments? Or
I think my favorite moments mainly were like every time that Morgan tried to test Harry or Molly, because at some point I feel like Morgan was able to figure out that Harry is a good guy, or at least a good enough guy. And I feel like him just being a total pain in the butt when he and I'm trying to avoid swearing because of like YouTube rules and stuff.
Oh, we're fine now.
Oh, yeah. Well, with Morgan trying
to
be a total fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Even though he's like completely incapacitated under Harry Dresden, who hates him's protection.
Yep.
And yet he's still like,
he's still a dick.
Yeah, he's still a dick.
Yeah.
And like there has to be a reason for that, or like either it's just in Morgan's character and that's how he like sees Dresden, and he never learned to really respect him beyond the like necessity stuff. Like he respects him as long as Dresden is useful to him, but not necessarily as like somebody he actually respects. I don't know. It's just a really weird relationship at this point.
Yeah.
I wish I had more context, really. Maybe we'll get that later.
Yeah. Hopefully.
But it just always made for funny moments, especially when Mouse had to like intervene, because it's like the dog has more sense than everybody else.
He says that he's like, this fucking dog has more sense than literally everybody in the room, dude.
Right. Yeah.
It's unreal.
And I liked how every time it kept like escalating
Yeah.
more and more.
Yeah.
Like
Yup.
each
Yep.
time was like worse than the last, to the
Yeah.
point where like Mouse is holding down like 2 people and like threatening another one, and like it just got so absurd and so great. I have a few quotes in a row that I'll just kind of burn through. Most of them are pretty funny, and then one of them is kind of a more serious one. Harry's talking to Injun Joe, and he's like, they're talking about how they'd like to die. And in
Harry's like 3
yeah,
cheerleaders
yeah,
and getting
Yeah.
stomped.
right.
Yeah.
Listens to Wind is like, I'd rather go in my sleep, I think. What about you? And Harry says, I want to be stepped on by an elephant while having sex with identical triplet cheerleaders. And dude,
Like, dude, that's rather specific.
That's
yeah.
very specific. Yeah.
That quote makes me laugh every time, just because of like how quick he is with it, and it's just
Mhm.
like, oh, it's
That's like
such a
well,
Harry moment.
yeah, that's like the bottle of baby oil quote in the book
Yes,
prior. Yeah.
in
Mhm.
Summer Night, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna sit down with a bottle of baby oil in an adult video, but
But he's like, I don't think that, or he says something. He's
I
like,
don't have
think
enough for
there's
2.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have enough for 2. Yeah.
That's right.
And did y'all notice how there were some parts in the story, like when he goes to Murphy's house and has to talk to the warden, and he's like, I told him something that he could do with his parts. And then the person responds, I believe that's anatomically unlikely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
like some lines are like completely written out, and some lines are Harry
They-
just describing
That's
or
right. And
vaguely
you have to
alluding
kind
to
of
something.
infer. Yeah, exactly. You make something up.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know if that was just like meet a deadline, or if that was just because Butcher couldn't think of like the perfect line for there, but knew
Yeah.
that there should be something there.
I think sometimes it's like a perfectly like valid, like on purpose choice, because some jokes I feel like you need the specifics of it. Like
Mhm.
like the next quote I have is the balls in a vice one.
Yeah.
And I think that one does not work unless you are making that specific imagery. But
Mhm.
like the joke about, I told him that was anatomically incorrect or unlikely or whatever, like those give the reader a little bit more room to think like, what might that be? And like
Yeah.
kind of have to like make up your own, like connect your own dots as to like what you think they were saying.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I think both can work really, really well. But yeah, I I love this moment with the Merlin. This is like the first time. Well, no, I guess Harry and the Merlin have kind of gone back and forth before, but I feel like this is the first time where they're kind of like on the same side a little bit, and like
Mhm.
Harry is actually like helping the Merlin, and the Merlin is actually accepting his help. And
Begrudgingly, of course.
right. And the Merlin says, why should I believe you'd do any such thing? And Harry says, because your balls are in a vice and I'm the only one who can pull them out. And it says, he arched a silver eyebrow. And Harry says, okay, that came out a little bit more homoerotic than I intended. And the Merlin says, indeed. And I just love.
And then some fruit of that too is when the Misfiend is released and the Merlin says that, he says, Harry, like, Harry Dresden, can you chase Peabody for me? And I'm like, there's a little bit of trust there, right? A little bit of trust going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely at the end there. It
Yeah.
is kind of like, oh wow, he is
like he said, like, there's senior counsel everywhere. There's whatever, Harry Dresden, you need to go chase this guy because I think that you can.
right. Yeah, that's
super cool.
That's absolutely right. And I think that's so it's cool to see that he's like, yeah, I know Harry can do this. Like let's have Harry do it.
Oh, a little bit of a tangent, but did y'all notice how in chapter 30, and I don't mean to sound like specific or a pain in the butt about that. That's just how I like took my notes here because I was listening to the audiobook.
You're good.
I have a note in here saying that Shag Nasty was the perp's ace in the hole, and not Dresden, but Jim Butcher used that specific language, ace in the hole, where in a previous book we had talked about how the Merlin, and this might be a little bit beyond the scope of this episode and stuff.
That's fine.
That's true.
But in a previous book, we know that the Merlin always has a plan, a backup plan, and an ace in the hole.
Yeah.
And then they use that specific ace in the hole about Shag Nasty.
Interesting.
Ooh,
Yeah, and that
that's
just
terrifying.
and I don't know if there's like something there, or
Yeah.
if that was just like the perfect phrase to use in that
Mhm.
moment and that's what went to
Yeah.
print. But
That's a good catch.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah.
a great catch. Yeah, I would have never ever thought about that.
Yeah. How
Let's hope the Merlin isn't.
how
know.
how would that work? How would you see him using the Naglashi to his advantage?
I don't think he could. I firmly believe that the Merlin is not part of the Black Council. He's not a bad guy. He's not trying to destroy lives. He wants to uphold magic and keep the White Council going.
Yeah, and
Whereas-
that's what I think too, which makes this
Yeah.
really, really weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if he like knows on some level that Thomas and Dresden are brothers
Mm.
and is afraid of Dresden coming under undue influence of the White Court.
Yeah.
Because that could totally be a thing.
Oh,
I
for
know.
sure.
Yeah. But
I
I don't know. This just feels weird to me, and I was wondering what you guys thought of it.
Yeah, that is definitely something I would have to think about more. I don't know how the Nagloshi would benefit the Merlin in this case, but there might be some way that he was trying to use it, maybe to get to this end result that they ended up getting to in the book. It's plausible that he could have kind of like mastermind
For
this
sure.
whole
Like
thing.
maybe like use the Nagloshi without ever even them
Right.
thinking that was the case. Like he was like he saw these things happening and he nudged this person here,
Mhm.
Right.
nudged this there to make it
yeah,
so this outcome.
Because if Thomas was in danger, that would force Laura to act, right? Because
Yeah.
they're siblings.
For
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, Laura, yeah, she cares a lot about Thomas.
Yeah, and so the Nagloshi has Thomas, so Laura has to act and has to behave in a way that the White Council will approve of, which is
Yeah.
helping their plan.
Politically, yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Damn,
Yeah,
Very
sorry,
interesting.
that
No,
like
no,
I
that's
just
good.
noticed that, guys.
I'm
It kind
glad
of
that
blew
you
my
said
mind
that
here.
because, like, yeah, that's awesome. I've never caught that, and I think that's one of those things. You know, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's
I mean, it
some
makes the
deep
series
theory.
fun.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love thinking about that stuff. I think that I don't know where I fall on the Merlin. I don't know if he's going to end up being like a bad guy. I mean, especially, no spoilers or anything, but especially everything that happens in the later books. Like, I don't know if, he's going to have like that big showdown with Dresden eventually or not. But I think I would side more with Gabe on that. I think that ultimately he is on the side of good, but he's so high up on the authority scale that he has to think about like the many instead of the few.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
and that kind of changes.
Well, and they even
somewhat.
talk about it in this book. You know, he talks to the Merlin, and he's like, your Hatchet Man is going away for murder.
Yeah.
It's just like terrible publicity. And the Merlin is like, yeah, it is. Like, he doesn't say that, but you can tell like he wants to make this so he doesn't like look terrible in front of all the other members of the council because
Right.
he runs the freaking council, like he is the council.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and especially with the drama that was talked about where Lafortier was the non-Western nations sort of advocate on the council,
Yeah.
and how a lot of the wizards from those countries and those areas didn't feel like they were being represented.
Yeah.
And Lafortier, we know that his goal is to keep the council together.
Yes.
So basically anything that could stir up that division is bad.
Yeah.
I wonder like how much the Merlin really knows, like if he knows like way more about Dresden than we think he does. And
I would assume so, dude. We've never even really
You don't get to
tasted
be
his
Merlin
power.
by collecting bottle
That's
caps,
right.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
like, Merlin as a word is the wizard, has been since
Right.
time immemorial. Like he is like the epitome of power,
Yeah.
the Merlin. So it's like, it's crazy to think about because like I would love to see like the Merlin, like, like fighting off an outsider or
Yeah.
doing anything else, right? Like something that we can really see the scale of his power, but
Oh,
we
yeah.
haven't been shown that at all,
Right.
except for the Mistfiend and the
Yeah.
communication, which is cool. But I
He's
feel
just
like
been this pain in the ass
yes,
politician.
exactly. But I feel like he can be so much more if
Yeah.
and I'm hoping that we will see that. There's got to be a point in time where we see his power.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. So to keep going with these quotes, we have Harry saying he's like, I'm like Indiana Jones.
Oh.
And she's like, Indiana Jones is a fictional character, Harry, and he has a whip. Do you
Do
have
you
a
have
whip?
a whip?
Yeah.
Murphy, are you coming on to me? So awesome.
I love that scene.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
much.
especially since it happened after the visit to Zero,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
club. Yeah.
Do
For
you
sure.
have a
Yeah.
whip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was influenced.
We have it's after the whole Vince Graver thing. I forget where exactly it falls in the story, but Morgan is disagreeing with something about what Molly did.
Well, yeah. So
And-
so Molly takes off to go help or talk to Vince Graver, and then as your thing says, like, I will not let her do black magic to that guy's mind. Absolutely freaking not.
It's like,
Well,
dude.
the one I'm looking at is way after that. It's
Oh.
like the next time.
Mhm.
It's like the next time that Harry comes in and they're all like on the floor like
Oh,
fighting.
Yeah.
my bad.
And and so Harry tells Molly to do something or something like that, and Morgan says, no, not until this little witch is bound with a gag and a blindfold.
Yeah.
And and Harry says, Molly has already done duty today as a beer calendar model. We're not dressing her up for a BDSM shoot next.
Oh, it's awesome.
Oh my god.
That's awesome.
Like, so like with Morgan's character, I'm sure he's a little bit out of the loop.
Right.
Has a more magical community / international focus since he works so closely with the White Council.
Yeah.
But dear God, he's walking into so many like double entendres here.
I know. It's fantastic.
It really is. It's great.
And I love this scene between Harry and Morgan where Morgan is getting like really like up in Harry's face. And he shot I think this is when he shoots the dog, when he shoots Mouse. And Harry says, you are a guest in my home. You came to me for help, and I'm doing my best. Hell, the kid has put herself in harm's way trying to protect you. I've done everything for you that I would have done for blood family because you are my guest. There are monsters from whom I would expect better behavior once they had accepted my hospitality. And what's more, they'd give it to me.
Mhm.
And oh, dude, I love
Burn.
this moment.
That's a slap in the face for sure.
Yeah.
It's and Morgan, it like instantly
It
takes
does.
Morgan
It
from like a
slaps him
10
in
to
the
a
face.
2.
Yeah, dude. Totally.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's such a good scene. I think it's such a well-written little bit of monologue, and I love that scene so much. So good.
Especially because like in books like Grave Peril, we've seen people take any sort of slight as a host as an opportunity to completely decimate or attempt to decimate their guests.
Right. Yeah.
And Dresden is over here being like, hey, I am giving you more hospitality and opportunity to not end up in a bad position.
Yeah.
Than you would in other cases. I am trying to be as good of a person as I possibly could be.
Yeah.
What the hell, man?
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I love the line like, I'm doing everything for you that I would do for blood family. I'm just like, oh, like that hits so hard, especially given their like antagonistic past. He's like,
and the fact that and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's especially impactful to me because up until this point, the only blood family we know that Dresden has is his brother, and other people don't know that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like an orphan who would desperately want blood family is trying to treat you like that.
Right.
And you're over here doing what you're doing. Like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I just thought that was a really good line. And it's like, dude, he's going to bat for you. And it is kind of like, despite like whatever, like, and I think it's such a good line because they were so antagonistic in the past, but it is the thing of like, hey, whatever happened before, we're setting that aside and we're going to deal with what's going on right now. And given the size of their vendettas against each other in the past, it really makes a good comparison.
Definitely.
Yeah, we also get this this other quote from Lucio, and this is one that I just thought was interesting because White Knight is probably one of my top 3 books of the series, and there's my absolute favorite monologue from Dresden in that book. It's not anything he says out loud, it's just something that's going through his head, and he's talking about like the different kinds of pains, and he's like, you have the happy pain of like a new relationship, or you have like the sad, like lonely pain of like a breakup or whatever. He's kind of going through all these things, and I feel like we almost get like a little bit of a nod to that, where Lucio says it was a much easier position to hold in my previous body. It was older, less prone to, and Harry interjects and he says life, and she says desire, loneliness, joy, pain, and he goes, yeah, life. And and he does some other like kind of inner monologue stuff around this that really made me think of the kind of pain monologue from White Knight. I like that a lot. Then we see Laura has ball-bearing mines in her wall. We see like the plaster that's like put up.
Anti-personnel mines,
Anti-personnel
APCs.
yeah. And it makes me think of another book that's coming up soonish. And I thought it was interesting because I think this is the first time that we've really, besides a short story, this is the first time that we've really seen this tactic to take out a wizard or something, where they just have like a room full of mines all pointed at the center.
And
it's like you can't possibly really protect yourself from that. So I thought that was cool. Then one of my favorite lines in the entire series is, we sat together in the car separately. And this is when Harry and Lucio he's telling her about Thomas being his brother. And she's like, yeah, I mean, like, I won't tell anybody unless it really comes down to it, unless I really, really need to. And Harry's kind of like, that's not good enough. Like, you know, like, I'm not going to take that. He's like, it'll be over my dead body before you tell anybody about Thomas. And so then it's just kind of this line, like, you know, she takes her hand away, and it's like, we sat together in the car separately. I think that was just a really good.
And he's, you know, they were in the hospital and talking to, it wasn't Georgia. Who was the one in the hospital? Oh, it was Justine. Was it okay? Andy or Justine? Somebody.
Oh yeah, Justine was in the hospital too. Yeah.
And Lucia was there, and he was like trying to cover her words. She was under anesthesia. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then he says, he's like, I would be happy to talk to Anastasia, but I will not talk to the captain of the wardens.
Right.
And, which is cool.
And then we get, so it's kind of an interesting contrast, because we get that scene that's really like tense. And then we get a scene with Murphy and Harry when they're in the car and he's panicking about the White Council coming to town. Because he hears that they're on their way out. And she tells him like, hey, it takes a long time for any of that to get like cleared. You know, they're not going to just respond to some random threat. Or some random call saying there's bad guys in town or whatever.
Like, do you know how many people, like, when we have a mass murder, do you know how many people call in and claim that their neighbor is the murderer to get them in trouble, or that they are to take credit? Like, they might know who it is. You know, thousands and thousands of calls about that.
Right. She also mentions that, you know, I love this, like, I am bastionless line, where she's like, you know, your bastion of order. He's like, I don't have a bastion. I'm bastionless. She's like, but you do in your own way. She's like, you drive the same car. You've always had the same apartment, the same clothes, the same office, the same food, all this stuff. You do the same thing day in and day out. And, you know, you don't really like change. And it's funny that comes up in this book, because the next book is Changes. And so I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing that he slips in there, because it's kind of a big thing in the next book.
Oh yeah, and I don't know if that's where it happened, but I know that in this book and the book before it, there were a lot of references to the titles of other books.
Yeah, you were mentioning that. I noticed the small favor line when they're
Mhm.
going into Zero, and he's like, oh, well, thank God for small favors.
And that's a great way to put it, but it's also not the most obvious way to put it. And
Right.
so I don't know if that's deliberate or not.
Oh yeah, like I think that all of them would probably be like hidden in some way. I don't know if any of them would really be super foreshadowing unless you saw any that you thought specifically were.
Oh no, it's like my experience with Small Favor a couple days ago where I just saw a bunch of things and then there was a comment about damn foreshadowing and then a few pages later we had Denarians.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't know, it just made me really, really sensitive to that kind of stuff as I was
Yeah.
reading through these books.
Yeah. But yeah, then we get the mouse scene. We talked about that. And then he's talking to Molly about what she did to Lucio's head, and she's telling him like how she looked inside and like how it would just be like this little nudge in certain directions that could make people do what you want.
Mhm.
And she says, it's how I'd do it. And then Harry thinks, I had never thought of her as someone who would one day be a very scary individual. And he goes on to tell her, I always know I'm about to do something wrong when I think I know I shouldn't do this. But
But
yeah, I thought that was a really fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
mhm,
It's another like big like learning moment for her.
Yep.
definitely, especially because with like the Doom of Damocles, if she messes up and gets taken down for it, so will he.
Harry dies. Yeah.
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 I shook my head and looked away from her. Hell's bells, kid. I choose to trust Anastasia Lucio because that's what people do. You don't ever get to know for sure what someone thinks of you, what they really feel inside. But I could. No, I said gently. Even psychomancy doesn't give you everything. We aren't meant to know what's going on in there. That's what talking is for. That's what trust is for. And I love like this whole scene. It goes back to like just those moments with Molly that I love so much where she's kind of like working through something, like she is struggling to understand like the concept of something, like in White Knight when she like breaks the beads.
Yeah.
And it's like she just can't like wrap her head around like the why of something. And so in White Knight, when she finally does, like raising up the beads didn't have anything to do with her like magically lifting them. It had to do with her coming to a certain conclusion. And I feel like this is kind of the same kind of thing, and I really really love it. There's this other part that reminded me a lot of Proven Guilty, where he says, so you've got a choice to make, Grasshopper. You can come with me knowing the cost if we succeed, or you can go. Go, she whispered. Go, I said. Leave now. Run for as long as you can. Hell, it looks a lot like I'm going to get myself killed anyway. Probably Morgan too. In that case, things will go to hell, but the wardens will be way too busy to chase you. You'll be able to ignore what's right all you want. Do whatever you like as long as you don't get caught.
Mm.
And it says she pressed her arms against her stomach. She sounded like she was about to throw up through the sobs. I put a hand on her head and said, or you can come with me. You can do something right, something that has meaning. Everyone dies, honey, I said very quietly. Everyone. There's no if, there's only when. I let that sink in for a moment. When you die, do you want to feel ashamed of what you've done with your life? Feel ashamed of what your life meant? And she like kind of shakes her head. And he's like, I promise that I'll be right beside you the whole way. I can't promise anything else, only that I'll stand beside you for as long as I can. And then she like agrees to keep going and stuff. And I it reminded me so much of Proven Guilty when he's talking to her in the church.
Yeah.
And he's like kind of giving her the ultimatum of like you can leave right now, like you can run. And he's like, I'm not going to chase you, but someday they'll catch up to you. And
Yep.
and so I just thought that was a really cool callback, because I think after this book, Molly changes quite a bit. She kind of becomes the person that we know in the later books. And so this is like one of the last times that we really get Harry like mentoring her. And so I just really like those moments.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway, do you guys see anything that you'd like to chat about on here?
Let's talk about Lara Wraith.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like she was a pretty monumental part of this book.
Mm.
And it just here, tell me what the note you have is. Go ahead and read it.
Laura disemboweling her sister.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's wild.
Yeah.
That's
Her
super
cousin.
crazy.
Or yeah, her
Yep.
cousin, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's kind of like I feel like Laura has this like, she loves Thomas and wants to protect him, but I feel like she also like kind of just like wants to help Harry in like even slight ways, Like she doesn't want
Yeah.
to see him fail so bad.
Right.
So she's willing
Yeah.
to use, even if it's like, you fucking brought me here. Like, why am I here?
Mhm.
Like, you didn't tell me that these council people were gonna be here. And she winks at him,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love that
I'm like,
scene.
yeah, me too. And it's
Yeah.
just like, I really think that she wants to make shit work, I guess.
Yeah.
But with the pretense of her doing something else,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I keep going back and forth on if Laura actually likes Dresden as a
Yeah.
person or a potential romantic interest
Yeah.
or whatnot, or if she's just using him because he's powerful and makes things more convenient for
Yeah.
her.
Yeah. We had Jim from Fantasy for the Ages on here,
Mhm.
and we hadn't done a read through of Dresden in a while. It was like closer to the beginning of when we started the podcast. He's like, you guys should go back through Dresden Files and think about if you think that Laura and Harry are a good match, or like if you think that she likes him. And going through this last time, I'm like, oh shit, she does have a thing for
Yeah.
him. Like
Mhm.
I truly believe that she does, because when Jim said that, I was like, no, like it's all a game to her. Like she's a cold bitch. Like she does not
Yeah.
care about Harry. But going back through, I see these little moments where I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that maybe they do end up together in the end. Like I think that maybe they do have some chemistry. Like I don't know for sure, but going back with that lens, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm seeing some things.
She certainly does let things end up in his favor,
Mhm.
from what I've noticed.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
Me too.
yeah, I know that the White Court loves doing things via cat's paws and everything. So what they're doing isn't necessarily the main event, if you will.
Mhm.
But at the same time, she's power hungry and she didn't get to be the de facto head of the White Court.
For no reason. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. She's a powerful player in this series, man.
Yeah.
Like just is
I
actually.
I think I've liked and respected her a lot more as a player this read through.
As a reader.
Yeah. Like as
Yeah.
like this time going through the series, I think
Yeah.
I've because I've always seen her as one of the big players, but I think I just respect how she's working a lot
For
more
sure.
going through this
Mhm.
time. Trying to think what else she did in this book. Besides
Yeah, I mean, other than
disemboweling
ripping her
cousin.
cousin's guts out, yeah.
Oh god,
We kind of see, and yeah, in that scene, we see how like almost immortal a White Court vampire could be if they're well fed.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
she gets burned alive, dude.
Yeah.
Burned to a crisp.
Yeah.
And Harry's like, she's dead. Like she's gone. There's
Yeah.
It's
no
like, no,
more-
she's still going, man.
She gets up being burned like so bad, and she gets up and she still does what she needs to do, which is disemboweling her cousin.
And
But yeah, it's super
like
powerful.
I've wanted to do this since we were little
Exactly.
girls.
Yeah. It's so
He hits her,
creepy.
hits her with the come hither, and Harry's like, he grabs Binder. He's like, we got to get out of here, dude.
Yeah.
Like, we'll
Yeah.
get caught up in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole scene was just horrifying.
Yeah.
But also it kind of teaches us a little bit more about the, I guess, kind of the magic system around the White Court, because it's not like we saw with Thomas when he had his hair salon. It's not just sex, it's intimacy specifically.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so she's having this really macabre intimate moment with her cousin. It's not it's not sex, but it's I don't know.
Yeah, and her cousin sort of responds like she's like a doe or one of the prey.
Being
Right.
fed upon, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Just gets addicted to it and into it.
Yeah. And speaking of which, what I thought was funny too is I guess kind of a little clue into the magic system or the lore around the White Court is the wolves, Billy and Georgia, they bite Madeline and get her blood in their mouth, and it basically reacts like ecstasy to them.
Mhm.
because Harry like finds them out in the woods like completely naked, like, oh, it's just so nice out here. And
It's like, did I interrupt a moment?
right, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of interesting that we get to see what the white court
That is
blood
interesting
does.
because the like black court saliva does that,
Yeah,
I think, right? Or a similar kind of effect.
yeah, it's
Not
more
a
there.
drug.
Yeah, theirs is more like a hallucination.
Okay.
This sounded more like ecstasy.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I
Yeah.
agree. I get what you're saying, but it's a similarity though,
yeah,
right?
it's like a
Some
drug.
part of
Yeah,
their body is like can be used as a drug or
right.
Mhm.
is like toxic in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we know what is that the red court blood or is that the black court blood? Do we
So
know what all of them do?
I thought it was the red court because when Bianca was getting involved with that one girl at the end of Dresden's visit in Stormfront, she seemed to be entranced in a similar way that I've seen victims of the white court. And
Right.
then she just let Bianca feed on her, and then Bianca misplaced the blame to Dresden.
Right. Yeah.
it is red court. I just googled it. It's red court.
Okay, nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see, like, I feel like we don't know that much about the black court, and I would
Yeah,
love
we don't.
I would love to know more.
Yeah.
Yep. Also, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking, I'll show you here in a minute. It's called, I really like it because I drink a lot of bourbon,
Mm-hmm.
and
Me
it's
too.
it's called Cooper and Thief,
Okay.
and it spends 3 months in whiskey casks.
Ooh.
And so it's literally like it tastes like wine and bourbon had a baby. And it's so good.
Don't
It's,
threaten me with a good time, man. That sounds delicious.
dude, it's so good. It's probably like my favorite wine that I've had so far. I just recently got into wine.
Mhm.
It's
And I was drinking box wine.
You're drinking
Nice.
what?
Yeah.
What is it?
Box wine.
Box
Dude,
wine.
I swear I
Nice.
love it, dude. It's really good. It's crisp. It's called Crisp White. It's a white wine that's like very appley.
Mm,
Mhm.
And I freaking love it, dude.
okay.
Nice.
We can't all be right. But that's okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
I know the judgment's there, dude. Like I get it, but I'm like I'm thinking about it like, dude, like I could go buy that bottle of wine. How expensive is that bottle right there? Like what, $10, $12?
It's like $20.
$20. Okay, cool. And that you get 3 glasses out of it. 4.
No.
Well, technically, a standard sized bottle of wine is supposed to be 6 servings. Now, when my mother in law pours it, it's actually 3.
Okay. That's okay. Then I'm
w-
on the same page with you then. Because
I was
I
gonna
think
say-
I may pour bigger glasses, but
Okay, because I was gonna say I fill it up to about there each time, and so far I've gotten at least 6 glasses out of it.
what?
Yeah.
But
Like
you
it-
also have a smaller wine glass.
Okay,
Like
good
wine,
I thought
okay.
that was a Cooper glass for a sec, or a Cooper, whatever they call it, for like Manhattans and stuff. First.
Oh, maybe it is. I don't know.
No,
But
it looks
anyways.
more like a wine glass. I think it was just like how far it came into the camera frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I buy this box wine for it's like $15 and I get 40 glasses.
But don't
Nice.
you want like the better product though?
Dude, that's the thing, because I have drinking, I've paid for the bottles of wine.
Yeah,
I'm not much of a red wine guy, so that's where I feel like that's where the specialty is like in red wine.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like that's way more out there.
Because
Yeah.
in white, as long as it tastes good and doesn't give you a bad hangover, it's good.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at too. Because like every once in Leah will get this red blend by it's like I think it's like called like 1,000 Horses or something like that, but it's a red blend just like the one you're
Mhm.
drinking, and it is good and I like it, but
Mhm.
it's $35 a bottle, and I'm like, dude, I just can't buy that every 4 days. You know,
Yeah,
like so much
yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most I would spend
Yeah.
on a bottle.
Mhm.
Like unless I had gotten like a big payday and I'm like, I'm gonna get like a nice bottle of
sure.
wine. I
Yeah.
think that this is probably like the max, but
Yeah.
it is like very worth
Really
it. Like
good. That's awesome.
I've noticed a significant quality improvement from this to what I've been drinking.
Nice. I'm gonna you sent me a picture of it. I'm gonna go get some for Leah and see if she likes it, because that'd be cool.
You should try this. It
Yeah.
literally tastes like bourbon and wine had a baby. It's so good.
Wow.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I'm drinking ginger beer and 4 Roses.
Nice. Okay.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, with a significant amount of Four Roses.
Heck yeah. That's the way we like it on this podcast.
Yeah.
Four Roses, is that
It's bourbon.
it is
it's
bourbon. Okay.
Yeah, it's our bourbon. So like most of the time, if I'm making cocktails, it's like Basil Hayden or like Woodford
Yes.
Reserve or
That's
Jefferson Reserve
Spencer's
if I'm
favorite
getting
is Basil
fancy.
Hayden.
Yeah, you're naming
Yeah.
all my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like Atlanta has like I think it's like AWS or ASW or something, but they have a distillery that makes pretty good bourbon as well. And they
Okay.
actually like I think they also make a gin that uses whatever like flowers you use to make gin. They grow them in the Oakland Cemetery, which is our like historic cemetery that's like several hundred years old.
Okay.
And it's great, but I just think it's hilarious because I live like a couple blocks from Oakland Cemetery and you grow
Yeah,
the flowers
cool.
in a graveyard. So
Do you
that's
like
cool.
gin, V? Like, do
I
you
love gin.
love gin? So that's one that I have never. So I've tried, like I've taken a sip of like a
Mhm.
dirty martini with gin. That's the only thing I've ever tasted with gin in it or gin
Mhm.
itself. Is
Yeah.
it like vodka or is it way different?
Okay, so vodka is like the water of liquor.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure, totally.
Yeah, and like I'm not knocking it because like if you have a soda or a mixer that has really good flavor and you just like you want that, but something that gets you a little bit turned at the same
Yep.
time, throw some vodka in it.
Right.
I love vodka and vodka drinks, but I also I did this kind of out of necessity because I drink like a rich old lady, and if I go out to drink like that, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I have a
for
lot of
sure.
stuff at the house.
Yeah.
But I really like gin and like floral things like chartreuse. Like you mix chartreuse fernet and then like lime juice and make like an industry sour, and that's one of my favorite
Ooh.
drinks on the planet.
Ooh.
But chartreuse is like $65 for a 75
Wow.
750 milliliter bottle. So
Whoa,
it's
that's crazy.
expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I try to save that for special occasions.
for sure. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Have you tried Ryan Reynolds aviation gin?
Yes, I like it.
Is it good? Okay.
Yeah. So gin, I've spent a lot more time making like bourbon cocktails and stuff than I have gin cocktails. But anything that's like gin or something where you want something that's very, very floral and then mix it with like something fruity, it works really, really well in that.
Nice.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't have too much experience with gin, but I always wondered what the aviation gin was like. I was really like skeptical about celebrity products until recently. People kept telling me to get the Snoop Dogg wine.
Dude, they have the capital to put behind it. That's
Yeah.
why it's good, dude.
And I was like, dude, just like celebrities just sticking their faces on things and it's not good.
Yeah,
and
it leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, but I tried it the other day. I got a bottle of the 19 Crimes red blend with Snoop on it. And I tried it. I'm like, oh, this is like really good. It's not my favorite thing I've tried so far, but I'm like, this is not like bad wine. Like
Wait, the
this,
19 Crimes, that's like the Australian wine where it was like 19 crimes that would get you shipped off to Australia.
right?
Okay, yeah, like that stuff is very, I mean, it's definitely like grocery store wine, but it's like good grocery store wine.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if I was just like at Safeway or something and they didn't have either 6 Cents or this stuff, then I would
Not even that. That's gas station wine. That's good. Because like all the gas stations around me, you can
they have
find
19 crimes.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Or like Apothic. My mother-in-law really likes that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For wine,
that.
It's a very decent wine.
Okay.
I'm not a wine person, so I don't like. I've had one bottle of wine that blew my mind, and it was like age 30 years. My father-in-law like got it when he graduated college, and then when he retired, he opened the bottle.
Oh,
holy
shit.
moly, that's cool.
Yeah, but I could definitely tell a difference, but I'd never spend like hundreds of dollars on a bottle of wine because it would just
I wonder if I should just start buying bottles of wine and just keeping them in my closet. And like, can you just age it like that?
Well, you can age it like that, but dude, it depends on the quality of how they barreled it, cast it, and sealed it. Because there's some wines that you could buy that you'd hold on to 5 years and they'd go sour.
Yeah, or like white wines. My mother-in-law like saved one for a year and it tasted like vinegar when we opened
it'll
it
go
up.
sour depending on how they did everything in the sanitary process. It'll go sour really fast.
Yeah, like there's a science to this stuff.
Yes,
it's really
massive,
intense.
dude. It's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, we're actually going to a winery in Not Camino Island. What's the other island by me? I can't
Mercer?
No,
Whidbey?
Woodby Island. Thank you. Yes. So Woodby Island's got a local winery there. My parents gave us tickets to go with them or whatever.
Nice.
I think late June.
Mhm.
And apparently their whole tour is all about the science behind, like from grape to bottle to ceiling. And I was like, dude, I'm excited to learn about how they do that stuff, you know?
That's
yeah.
cool. That's cool. So let's go back into this. We're pretty much kind of rounding out to the end here. I do want to mention Rashid.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, the gatekeeper.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we see him at the end of the dock, and he's trying to stop Dresden from fighting the White Council, and Dresden's like, "Why do you care?" He's like, "It's all about places and times. It is not yet your time to do so." Although he makes the inference that someday Dresden will. I don't know. It's just really interesting. Anytime Rashid comes up on the
Graces us with
page,
his presence.
yeah,
Yeah.
things get really, really weird and just kind of spooky, and so I can't wait to learn more about Rashid. But he knew a way to get onto the island, like he knew like a way through the Never
And he's
Never.
been there before, and the
Yeah,
island holds a grudge.
Yes. It's like, what's the tea here, guys?
And then Harry, and I didn't catch this last time, but Harry he thinks back about Demon Reach, and he's like the limp skip, the limp that he has. Like he
yeah,
says that, and I'm like, holy crap, is that what happened? Like, did Rashid cause this limp?
yeah.
Crazy.
It's inferred that Rashid and
Yes.
the spirit
Yeah, they
fought
like
for
battle
sure.
it out.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right quick, did anybody else notice how Rashid was like, you have 5 minutes to explain yourself? And then Dresden and him start talking, and it's very obvious that like over 5 minutes have passed.
Yeah.
And I know that he's the gatekeeper and can like see further in time, but do you think there might have been some like wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff going on?
Oh yeah,
Ooh, for
without
sure.
a
That's a
doubt.
good question.
Yeah, I think that Rashid is definitely. I mean, it's all been but confirmed that he is messing with time, or that he has some
Control over
ability.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some like borderline illegal time magic going on.
Yep.
Yeah, because I mean that's like pretty much what Proven Guilty was about. He's like, "Hey, I know that in a few days there's going to be black magic
Sends
in
him the letter.
Chicago," and yeah,
Exactly.
and
Like,
Mhm.
yeah.
so like he somehow he knows what's about to happen. I think that it's dimension hopping, like
Mhm.
parallel dimension hopping, like we're going to see in Mirror Mirror.
Mhm.
And I think that maybe he's not necessarily seeing the future, but he's jumping between all these timelines, and a lot of
Mhm.
them are really similar. And so
Mhm.
he kind of knows like what's going to happen. That could be the case, but also, it could be that one timeline is slightly ahead of the other one, and so when he jumps back, it seems like time travel. But I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm so eager to find out more about him, because there's just so much weird.
Dude, he's like the ultimate mystery of this series.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, he really is.
Like
Yeah.
he
'Cause, like,
doesn't get involved unless it's
exactly.
important.
So then, yeah, later we get to see the wardens cutting loose, running through the island, and
Yeah.
we get a few sentences of Dresden talking about how, there may be like 5 or 6 people that are using fire magic, but they're all using it very differently. Like
Mhm.
some people are doing like a flamethrower thing. Some people are like shooting like little tiny like red suns or like
Just beams,
stars.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like just really precise. He's like, some people are chucking fireballs, and like just how all this stuff is used so very differently, because everybody just has a different understanding of what magic is and like how it's used. And I
Mhm.
thought that was really, really cool.
Let's along with that, let's talk about our very own Native American Joe
Yes.
and the battle that he has
Oh,
with the
listens to win.
Nagloshi. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. That was a joke somewhere in the book where he's like,
Yeah.
technically it's Native American Joe instead of
Right.
Inja Joe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was super cool. The whole battle, and I
That
loved
was
how,
sick.
well, starting with Harry, like Harry was like super outmatched, and then we have Toot Toot come in,
Mhm.
like the save, dude.
Yeah.
The Valiant Fairy.
Yes, exactly. Came in with the save and like literally saved his life by distracting and cutting this Nagloshi. And this is the one comes up, and his reason was to come up because Harry had the power to basically like hurt, well, not hurt, but he had the power to take the water out of the trees elsewhere. So that was his like motive. But he's like, all right, we're gonna need to fight this battle right now. scares him away, and he's like, this is a cool thing of Intellectus too. He's like, you can, like, I know about the power you hold over this place. Like, you could take the water out of these trees and make them collapse. And Harry's like, really? And then like he says really, and the island's like, we can do that.
Yeah.
Like, we got that, no problem. Like, let's do it right now.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah, that was sick. I loved the whole fight with Joe and the Nagloshi,
And how they just kept shape-shifting.
Shifting
over and over.
One would
dude,
like turn, one like turned into a bear to squash the other one, and the other turned into a mouse to get under it. And like,
yeah,
dude, it's so sick. I'm like that. Like that's thinking so fast about like what form you need to have at that moment. And I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah, and Harry even says that later on when he's talking to Ebenezer. He's like, you know, that was some wicked shape shifting. And he's like, yeah, he offered to teach you, you know, if you want to learn some shape shifting. And I'm like, dude, do it. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Harry turning into a fucking bear and just like going at somebody? It'd be so cool.
Yeah. Harry even mentions like, he's like, I'm afraid I'd turn into a duck and never be
stuck.
back.
Yeah.
But speaking of bear, and I know we've mentioned this before, but since we have a new person on here, dude, the fucking bear belt that just isn't applicable anymore. The bear belt that was in Full Moon, that like
there was a bear belt.
Yeah, remember he touches the
I thought it was just talked about.
No,
I thought
he
it
uses it.
No, he uses the wolf belt.
No,
yeah, I thought it was a wolf belt.
No, he uses the wolf belt too, but he made like a tool that was like in the shape of a bear, and it's his belt buckle. And when he touched it, he got all this energy because he was at the very like limit of his magic and like exhaust and all this stuff. And then he touches his bear belt buckle, and it was like, whoa, and just like gave him all this crazy energy. And then it just goes away. And
I don't remember that.
And nobody talks about it. Yeah.
It just completely went away. And I understand why, because it's a little OP. Like, Butcher can't just like have him use like this belt buckle every single time he gets tired.
I mean, at the same time, I like in the real world, I really would have expected somebody else to have taken up the whole like 3-eye cause and be like, hey, people want to buy this.
Right.
And I don't think like John Marcone, like he does a good job as like a crime baron and someone who consolidates power under him.
But he can't be everywhere.
Exactly. Like, why isn't anybody else doing that? Especially because like in this book, it talked about how like if you're a wizard and you use your third eye to like see magical things, it can drive you nuts. And then in the book previous to this, it talked about how there were ways to make people more susceptible to being controlled through magic.
Yeah.
And one of them was like drug use. I guess my conclusion was going back to the whole like bear belt buckle, that sort of disappeared.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised that nobody else, maybe in another area where John Marcone doesn't have as much influence. I don't understand why nobody else has tried to continue this.
Right.
And I know we have the Paranet now, but at the same time, Harry's like acknowledged the limits of the Paranet where it can't just be like a call to Harry signal.
Right. No, you answered the question I was gonna ask. So you nailed it. Because I was gonna ask, like, well, you said somewhere else where he doesn't have reach, Marcone doesn't have a reach. Because I was like, well, within his reach, like obviously everybody's afraid. But if there's somebody out there, you would think, right? If somebody in a different state or a different area would be doing this stuff to, you know.
Right. Because if it works in Chicago, it'll work in LA or Atlanta or New York.
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. I got you.
Yep. Speaking of somebody sending up the signal to Harry, what would his like bat signal be?
I think it would be the thing that's right behind me, this big purple thing.
Oh yeah, that
right
could
here.
Be.
Yeah.
Without
the lady, without whoever that is behind him, just like this big purple sigil.
Right. Yeah. Either that, or I was thinking like Bob the Skull.
Yeah.
With his highlights, just like orange. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Or maybe a donut with vanilla frosting and sprinkles.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah. So everything happens at the island, and there's this thing beforehand where Harry is having like pictures taken of the alley, and you know the whole thing with Molly, and she mentions like somebody definitely messed with Lucio's head, and Harry leaves her a note, and it says, "When I got back home, Lucio was gone. I was pretty sure she would be. And I love this fake out because the first time I read this book, I thought it was Lucio that had been, and she kind of was, like, she ended up being involved in it, but like I thought that she like was the traitor. And so I thought that this was like, oh, she's not around, and she didn't go to the island or anything because she knows that she's the traitor. And that's what I took that as. And so I thought that this was like a really good fake out. I don't usually like fake outs, but I thought that this was a really, really good one. And then we get the whole Mist Fiend. We kind of talked about that, where we see the Merlin communicate with everybody, and Harry's
and it's
even
like Mordite.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like Mordite Mist Fiend, exactly.
Yeah. And
And
Harry's
it
like,
kills
I've
like
never...
it kills like so many wizards too. Like even in the first, just reading, you count like 5 or 6 that die, but then later on they say like it killed like 25 or whatever.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
very violent thing.
Yeah, and it happens so quick. Like one
Instantly,
tentacle is
dude.
just like shoo, and it just
Dead,
like hits people.
Yeah.
I also liked James Marsters' narration in this, like when Harry is yelling,
No light.
"No lights, no
Yeah.
No
lights,"
light.
and like James Marster like actually like yells, but it's not
Yeah.
like killing your ears. And I think that he's just like so good at things like that, where he can do like a really sad scene and bring a lot of emotion to that, or like something where he yells like "fuego" or something, and like he's actually like
You feel it in
yelling.
your
Yeah.
bones, dude.
Yeah, it's really good.
I love James Marsters. I think he's the perfect person to do Dresden, and he'll even use the same voices for like Michael and Marco, or not Marcone, but Michael and
Nicodemus?
Nicodemus. Yes,
Yeah.
he'll use like a
Oh,
really similar voice for
Yep.
them, and you can still tell them apart.
yeah.
So I think he's brilliant, but I also think that a lot of credit needs to go to the people that edit this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because like
yes,
if
for
James
sure.
Marster is like shouting something and putting like his whole voice into like really
Yeah.
bringing on the fuego or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and then they make it quiet enough so it doesn't like blast our ears
Yes.
off. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's cool.
Absolutely.
That's cool. So yeah, then after the Mist Fiend thing, we get the moment with Harry, or Morgan is laying in the snow.
Yep.
And he's like, he says, I didn't tell them about Molly. He's like, because I knew that you know what it's like to be an innocent
That's
man
when I started
hounded by the
crying.
warnings. And oh my God, it's such a good scene.
Yeah.
It's such a fantastic scene. And Morgan's like, let them blame it on me. I want them to blame it on me. And I think it was in the microfiction that we were reading earlier, that had a picture of them laying in the leaves.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I love that picture. So I had never seen that fan art before, or whatever it is. It's probably licensed art, but I had never seen that before, and I really liked that, because that scene is such a touching one, and it just brings everything, like the whole like Harry and Morgan arc. It brings that to a really good conclusion, and it wraps it up in a really good way, to where it's like, that on some level, Morgan in his heart believed that Dresden was an innocent man, and that he was just doing what he thought he needed to out of precaution. And I thought it's just such a good scene. I can't give Butcher enough praise for that scene.
Definitely.
Then we get everything with Lucio. Turns out that she was mind controlled all along. She was the one that killed LaFortier, and Morgan was kind of covering for her. And then, we find out from Rashid that it's more than likely that her mind had been tampered with so much that they are no longer an item, because like, how would she know if she really does love Harry, or like if it was just kind of like this thing that somebody pushed her into, and so she decides to abandon it altogether, which I'm like, I get it on some level, but on another level I'm like, okay, like, now, like, you feel a certain way, like,
well, but how? She's not cured. She's not. It's not like she's just instantly cured. Like, how does she know that her feelings are real?
By then she had been through all of the like deprogramming and
But
therapy and stuff.
Rashid says that or not Rashid. Oh yeah, it was Rashid. Like it's gonna take a while. It's not something that just he can fix in 2 days. Like it'll take years and years and years.
When she's talking to him outside his car, it's been like weeks and weeks and weeks. It's like a lot of time has passed.
Okay, I don't think it's enough time though.
Okay.
I don't think that she's like cleared of the mental. Not I'm not saying she's still like inhibited by it, but I think that there's still something in her head because I don't know. Maybe that's the way I read it. I feel
So
like
like
that.
the way I read it is like she admires and respects Dresden
Yeah,
and might like feel fondly for him, but at the same time, like she's detached her emotional needs is not the right word here.
tether maybe.
Yeah, maybe, but she's detached her like herself emotionally from her job, and she's decided, oh, I want to be single and focus on the job now that I'm old and don't have like the urges that I had when I was younger. I had a
Yeah,
lot of fun when I was younger, but those habits no longer suit me or no longer serve me.
yeah,
Um, and so like this is still sort of like a violation of her free will to try
Mm.
to continue things on with Dresden. Just because it was sort of forced upon her. And that was obviously something that she wasn't wanting to support without having the interference that led her to do other things like kill a
yeah,
Fortier.
Yeah. And that's fair, but she also does mention that now that she's in a younger body, she's like, I'm ready to do that stuff again because like this body has like all these needs and stuff. And
Mhm.
so like I don't know, I get it and I don't. I think that she knows how she feels about him, and it was just like I don't know.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. I also think it's kind of weird, like with the wizards. So she might have a younger body, but she still has like an older mind.
Mhm.
yeah,
And I see that a lot because of course you had like the whole like Morgan had a crush on her and then
Yeah.
other apprentice master dreams of relationship stuff. And so it gets kind of weird with the wizards and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. She even mentions like, how am I supposed to like give you orders now and stuff?
yeah, for
That'd be
sure.
Yeah.
tough. That'd be tough.
Yeah,
But then we get we're at the end, we get one of my favorite Dresden Files endings to any of the books where it's kind of like a big downer of an ending. Like everything is just really sad. Like it's not a good happy ending by really any means. Like no matter what part of the story you look at, none of it is like has come out on top besides killing Peabody. The only thing that kind of gives us a little bit of like brightness to the ending is Harry shows up at Billy and George's, now Will and George's, and he knocks on the door, and Andy's kind of living with them. And he's like, hey, like I brought, my Arcanos papers and or game or whatever. He's like, I'd like to play. And they're like, oh, I don't know. Like, Kirby was the one that always was like the game master for that game. And like, I don't know if we could do it. And he's like, well, I present you Waldo Butters, and his nerd penis is bigger than all of ours.
yeah.
And I love that quote.
Yeah,
And
that's a good one.
I just love this moment where like God, Butcher does such a good job of like writing it where he's like you can feel like the downness of the
The
whole
room,
room.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And as soon as like Butters kind of comes in, they're like, it's just this feeling of, oh, maybe we can start to get
well,
back
and
to
Harry
normal
even says
life.
that he's like life goes on, like we have to keep going forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, Butters here we can play Arcanos. He's like, can master like 10 other games if we want to try something new, like whatever
Yep.
you guys want to do, let's do it.
Yep.
Yeah,
And they even ask Andy, and Andy's like, okay. And
yeah,
it feels like a little bit of healing is happening,
yeah,
and like kind of a new season of life,
yeah,
Mhm.
bringing Butters into the mix, because Butters, this isn't really spoiling too much for later books, but Butters becomes like a very good friend of that whole
yeah,
like werewolf group.
yep,
Mhm.
And so I just really I love this introduction of Butters into like the main story, because from here on out, Butters is kind of like a main character
yeah,
now.
Mhm.
And just like I love this ending. It ends on such like a happy note, and whenever I think of like my favorite Dresden endings, this is always one of them. And there's nothing like super profound at the end here, but he does say, "See, here's the thing. Morgan was right. You can't win them all, but that doesn't mean that you give up. Not ever. Morgan never said that part. He was too busy living it. I closed the door behind us while life went on. It's so good.
Yep.
It's so good. I love it. I love
Mhm.
that ending so much. So kind of finishing up with world building and new magic. I didn't feel like there was really a whole lot of new magic in this one besides like the island invocation.
Sanctum invocation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was really cool getting to see like a ritual in full swing. Because we've seen him set up rituals before, but we've never seen one actually like play out.
Yeah.
So he goes out there like completely nude to keep any like spells from his duster or anything interfering. And we kind of saw him do that a little bit in Proven Guilty, where he's like taking a shower to wash off any like residual magic and stuff. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And then we get earlier in the book, we get Lucio and Dresden having an interesting conversation about both Harry's mother and why the council doesn't get involved in non-supernatural affairs. And this has kind of been a question throughout the series, like, why does the council not stop things like World War II? And Lucio mentions like, well, our council is made up of people from all across the world. So it would be like a huge internal conflict if we were like supporting one country rather than another, or like sometimes in war, like in World War One, there was no clear bad guy. It was kind of like so many things had happened and there was so many things that were going on at the same time. It's like you can't really point the finger in one direction like you could have at the end of World War II. She's like, even at the beginning of World War II, people in America didn't really know what was going on over there because there just wasn't enough information. And she's like, it would just be impossible to be fair and organized about all that. And I just thought that was a really good point, because as a reader, especially if you're reading through the series multiple times, you're like, yeah, why aren't wizards like superheroes just saving the day every single day? And like, why don't they have more publicity or like whatever? And I feel like that's, I feel like that was a perfectly good explanation for that question. Any other like new world building or magic things that you could think of that we saw in this book besides like the Naglashi? I guess that was kind of new.
I feel like we get a lot of Margaret Le Fay drops in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like Lucio knew her, and going back to what you were talking about, Margaret Le Fay was like, "Hey, why don't we like add justice to our rules and like try to intervene with stuff?" And then you have the whole like listens to wind, basically holding on to his principles as a member of the White Council until it was too late for him to change his mind and help his people. You also have that drop at the end where Harry's reading McCoy's journals, and McCoy was like,
talk about that.
yeah, and McCoy was like, I trust Dresden. He's one of the like 4 people I would trust to hold on to the mantle of whatever there is on Demon Reach. But at the same time, I trusted Maggie's too.
Right.
And obviously that didn't work out the way he thought it was going to.
Yeah. I can't wait to learn more about Harry's mom. And I know we kind of do in the next couple books, but like I would love to like really know like her whole story. I really hope that we get all of that someday.
She's very enigmatic, and so whenever I like see her appear or anything she's done get referenced in any of these books, I take a special notice, just because it's like, oh, here's a tidbit from something that I'm sure is going to be important later.
Yeah.
But she's still like, even like halfway through my second read of the series, she is such an enigmatic character.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where this is going to go.
Right. So as far as final thoughts, Changes is the next one, which is going to be wild.
Crazy. Yeah. Crazy.
I can't believe we're finally at Changes. I remember when we started this read along like 2 years ago, it was like, oh, I can't wait to get to Changes. And now we're finally here. So I'm super, super excited for that. And then the other thing that's interesting, and I think this is the most spoilery thing I have, but I'm not going to spoil anything, is that it says Rashid looks around with his eye and says the chances you'll survive this are minimal. And this is kind of what we were talking about earlier with the timey-wimey stuff. But I'm just like, and we find out in one of the later books a little bit more about it. But like, what is this thing? Like, what is this eye that he has, because I don't think we ever get like really specific info on it.
Yeah.
We find out like what it does, but we don't find out like why it is, right? And so I'm really excited to like find out more just about Rashid in general and about this eye. And you know, we even see that like when Harry steps onto the island, he looks with his eye and he's like, oh, your odds are much better now. And it's interesting.
Yeah.
And how Rashid kind of freaks out about
For
that.
sure. He's like, holy
Yeah.
crap, you did it. Like you did.
Yeah,
Did you do that? Yeah.
right.
Crazy.
Oh yeah, so yeah, then it's in my next note that I mention it. The journals, and this goes along with the island, but we'll talk about the journals in a second. But Ebb's journal says that it's fated that Dresden would find this island and become its, you know, master, I guess, or like commune with it. And so, like, obviously we know because we've read the next few books and we kind of know like what the island is and stuff.
And
but at the same time, it's like we don't know why it was like his destiny to find the island, which is something I'm really interested in learning.
my
more.
question is how did Ebenezer like find like what kind of prophet told him that? Like, did he consult with like a fairy and figure that out, or did he consult with?
I think it's just something that he knows that we don't, and he's basically saying, "Oh, of course, Harry found the island. Like, why wouldn't he?"
Oh, okay,
And
okay,
it's like, well,
yeah.
tell us, Ebenezer. Like,
But
we don't
yeah,
know.
no, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I think that he knows something that involves Harry's past and how that would connect to the island potentially,
Yeah.
but we just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to see what that is. But then we get all these journals, and that is like one of my favorite not like mysteries, but just favorite like things to think about for this series, because we're obviously at this point, all of this stuff that we've read so far has already happened, and they are journal entries. Like we are reading Harry's journals from like the future or whatever, right? And so I think it's such a cool idea to have Dresden like find these journals that go all the way back to the original Merlin, and think that he is now thinking that probably by this point in the future, Ebenezer is dead and Harry is putting up his journals next to his mentors, and he's following the succession. And so I think that I just love that whole like idea of these journals. Hopefully, you know, Harry will be able to read like the Merlin's journals someday, and I just love the whole idea around that. So yeah, any thoughts or theories on the journals? V, have you done anything about this on your channel?
I haven't done anything about the journals specifically, but I think that across the community, it's a widely accepted theory that the Dresden Files series, as Dresden tells them to us, are his journals, especially because they're written in past tense. And with this, it fits. And then McCoy is like, "Hey, maybe one day you'll write a journal." Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Which is a very pointed way to look at it.
Yeah. All right, well, let's wrap it up here. V, thank you for joining us. This has been a lot of fun to chat with you and have somebody who is also really knowledgeable about the Dresden Files to kind of go back and forth with. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've had a lot of fun today. Thank you.
Nice. All right, well, that is going to wrap us up there, everyone. Please go ahead and check out Caffeinated Covers on YouTube for really great Dresden Files theories and discussion, as well as other stuff that she's got going on over there. I've really enjoyed her channel, and I think that you will too. Links are down below in the description for her stuff, as well as our Discord, Twitter, and second channel, where we talk about movies, video games, and TV shows. We have a bunch of great content coming up for you guys that you won't want to miss, so please subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and it really does help the channel when you like the video. Thanks for watching, and until next time, try not to get stepped on by an elephant while having sex with identical triplets, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yep. Perfect. Perfect ending.
And a big shout out to our first Night Angel tier patron, Shad Zaman. Thank you so much, man.